even the thought that we're saying it is pretty crazy, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is. It is pretty crazy that we're even talking about it. And then now that's reality. It's like, where's he going next? Who's his staff? If they're going to hire Gerard Mayo, okay, what does that mean for Steve Belichick? What does that mean on the offensive side? I think Josh McDaniels is available. Bill O'Brien's available. Like, are they taking the whole gang just to a new city? Like, is he GM again? Is he head coach again? Like, now we have to, because we're sports media assholes. Yeah. We have to ask those questions. And I'll be very fascinated to see, because like David Tepper in Carolina, second wealthiest owner in the entire NFL. Yearning for credibility.
Yes.
Yearning, screaming for throwing cups of ice on people who I've heard those people.
That guy's still in the hospital.
Are they still in ICU?
In a coma, I think, still.
Future earnings because of everything that was lost from that ice cube hitting exactly where it was.
Temple.
Yearning for credibility. There's an opportunity there for him to say, you're GM, you're head coach. And we talked about him rebuilding the Patriots. I don't think he wants to do that to another program or franchise, but you'd have to guess what his take would be on Bryce Young, I think would be the big one there. And he obviously loves Saban. Him and Saban have a great relationship. He's from Alabama.
True.
I assume he knows a lot about him. But what if he comes in and is like $35 million. We'll pay you every single year. You're the GM. You're the head coach. Do whatever. Just please make us good. And Bill's going to say, here we meet on Mondays. No, we don't meet on Mondays.
No, we ain't doing
and then we keep it moving. It's like, that could be a little And then you talk about yearning for another ring before, the guy's old. Cowboys, like that being talked about, you could certainly see Jerry Jones doing something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Big Mike McCarthy has had a phenomenal year. The best year he's had as a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He's doing more this year than he's ever done in the past. He's more of a reason for the success that they're having. And everybody's like, well, he better go get a ring. We don't get another banner flying Jerry World. He's out. It's like, what an insane profession that you can be a guy who has a Super Bowl already in Big Mike McCarthy. You can have your best year that you've ever had. But now that Bill Belichick's available, it's like everybody's on the hot seat. And I'm very thankful that Shane Steichen has proven he's the next Bill Belichick here in Indianapolis, so we don't even have to dabble in the conversation. But to what Coach Pagano brought up earlier, he's like, every owner is currently looking at their head coach.
Bingo.
Looking at their GM. Hey, I'm going to need you to come draw.
You said you got Belichick, Carroll, and Saban. Why not just throw it out there? All they can do is say no.
They should all coach together.
But that was, I was going to say, like, how about we run it back to the Cleveland days, right? And we got Belichick and Saban goes as his DC.
Oh, Saban just defensive coordinator, by the way. Doesn't have to deal with all the other stuff. He would love it. Bill Belichick not talking to media anyways. Don't do it. Who's GM there? Both of them?
Don't matter.
Shit, let Carroll talk to the media. He's great.
Yeah, Pete Carroll's our...
Lombo comes back.
Yeah, let Pete Carroll talk.
He could be the motivational, the Tony Robbins.
What a wild January we've had.
Rapture, obviously those are teams without head coaches and some of them without GMs. Are there any teams now, though, that, maybe reevaluate who they have currently? Anybody who had, maybe a down year or a year that kind of dropped off after having success last year, a la the Giants, who, they were also looking into Bill allegedly in the past. Will those teams kind of think about, like, hey, if we can get Pete Carroll or obviously Bill Belichick or even, one of these other guys, Vrabel, if you will those teams reevaluate too, and then we might see a little more movement from elsewhere?
Yeah, first of all, the Pete Carroll thing was interesting because he, sort of gets moved aside or moved upstairs or whatever, and then says he really wants to coach. And I'm like, you do? Like, look, I think he's awesome. So that would be okay if he wanted to, but he's also under contract. So, like, now that's a team that could theoretically trade for a coach if somebody wanted. But so I looked at the kind of landscape today. I took a little look, and I thought in my brain of, like, who would fire their coach for Belichick. And I haven't really found anyone just yet. And some of the places that I was wondering, like, would they make a move? The Bears, the Saints, they all seem to be moving forward and sticking. Now, could there be a team in the playoffs? Could there be a team that, would be widely discussed as a potential spot for Belichick, who has in the past had some tough playoff performances and a coach that no matter how good he does is always perpetually under fire? Could they move on if Belichick is sitting there? potentially.
Okay, so there's a lot of potential. Tone has a question for you.
Yeah, you kind of. We know you were talking about the Cowboys there, Ian. Is there any? Well, kind of. Is there? Don't forget, we know you. Is there any?
12-5 last 3 years. Mike
12
McCarthy.
and
Pretty
5.
damn good.
Is there any other? Let's just keep the Cowboys out of it. Is there any other playoff teams that if they have a bad showing, that their coach could potentially be a change there?
I don't see one. Now, this is always bad because you say this and then someone goes out and does something crazy. I would be surprised if any of the playoff teams end up moving on for their coach. Like, now, the playoff situations can change things. I remember last year, Chargers were riding high. They go down, lose a huge lead to the Jaguars, and I'm waking up the next morning going like, are the Chargers going to make a change? And I think they did consider it, ended up sticking, and probably should have moved on. But, maybe the games will dictate if something horrific happens, and that all tends to get magnified. But I don't see right now one of those places.
Ty has a question for you, Rap.
Yeah, Rap Sheet, you mentioned Seattle and the stuff with Pete Carroll. I think we all kind of felt the same. Seems like he definitely still wants to coach, so that whole situation's weird. But then they were talking about Dan Quinn being a likely replacement in Seattle. How likely is that to happen? And also, does that make Jerry's decision to get a guy like Bill potentially easier if Dan Quinn leaves? Does he go ahead and just, barring whatever the Cowboys do in the playoffs, fire McCarthy and then let Bill bring his own staff in?
Well, I think, first of all, the relationship between Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick is a really good one, right? So this would not be like I'm not saying anything's going to happen because I really do think McCarthy stays. But if something does happen, there's a long history there with Belichick and Jerry Jones. As far as the Dan Quinn thing, I'm not going to say when he removed himself from consideration last year, I don't want to get into what we just talked about. When he physically removed himself from being a coach candidate last year, my thought was always he's waiting for Seattle. Now, he's going to have options this year. He is a really strong candidate in a year where I think there's some good coaches out there, but maybe the resumes aren't what they've always been. Like there'll be some teams taking a little bit of a risk. Dan Quinn is not a risk. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's a really good coach. I think Seattle, I think there's some mutual interest and that would make sense. That's always seemed like the logical thing. And culture is so important there. You wouldn't have to teach anything. Like he gets it. He knows it. He lived it. I think that one, some dot connecting, but that one would work for me.